And we are live here on hashtag Badge Chat K12 for the first time in a few weeks, and super excited to be joined this week by two awesome educators out of University of Oklahoma, Dr. Terry Collin and Brody Smith. Hello, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here.
Glad to be here.
And you can follow Terry at Dr. Terry C, Terric, at Dr. Terry C, and at Broby Smith. That's B-R-O-B as in boy, EE_SMYTH. You can also find those on Twitter if that I just now tweeted out on the hashtag if you're having trouble locating that. And real quick, before we dive into just some of the awesome that y'all are doing at University of Oklahoma, do you mind quickly just introducing yourselves and your roles?
I'm Dr. Terry Collin. I'm an associate professor at OU, and I coordinate all the technology integration courses. And I'm also an Apple Distinguished Educator, amongst other things. And this is Brody. He's one of my students.
My name is Brody. I'm a pre-service English teacher and also an Apple Distinguished Educator now.
No, you're not. You're an Apple teacher.
Teacher, there we go.
There we go.
Wow, a pre-service Apple Distinguished. That's awesome. Middle or high school, Brody?
Definitely high school.
Going to be teaching high school English. That's fantastic. Before we get really into the weeds, I think, as we have you on as guests who are doing some really, I think, fascinating work as far as jumping in the digital badge credential sandbox with pre-service educators. And so I think we have a lot to learn there. But before we kind of dive in and unpack that, Terry, could you share with us just sort of your journey from what is a badge to I need to be exposing, the future educators of, the next generation to digital badge credentials?
I'll tell you, my dean talked to me about 2 or 3 years ago and said, hey, I've been hearing this thing about badging and I want you to do this. And I have to be honest with you, I was insulted at first. And the reason is like, I thought about like, if you were teaching like philosophy of education or like theory of education and like I earned my constructivist badge, like everybody would think that was crazy, right? And I thought, well, just because I teach a technology, like kind of an applied thing, this isn't like, why am I badgeable? And I have a friend that works at BYU, and why do I just blank on his name? It'll come to me in a second, who's been doing a lot of stuff with badging. So I've been reading his stuff as we go. And I was kind of thinking about it. One of the problems that I have is that I have a mix. I have early childhood majors and high school teachers and elementary teachers all in the same class. And my number one complaint from my class is that I'm making the high school teachers do early childhood stuff and the early childhood teachers do high school stuff. And so badging started to become the obvious way for me to be able to allow students to personalize their experience and build their portfolio.
So all this stuff that pre-service teachers are hearing, that when you get into the classroom, you really can't go in one size fits all. You need to differentiate for learners based on background knowledge and need and level of readiness. You need to personalize learning for your students and make it real for each one of them. That in so many of our teacher prep programs, there's no walk to match the talk. Do I hear you kind of say that the badges were kind of a pathway for you to walk the talk?
Well, and also I'll tell you a piece of feedback I got. So, I did the Apple Teacher thing, which is a badging-based program where you can become an Apple teacher based on iPad or Mac, and you earned a certain number of badges. And it was things that I was always teaching in class. And then one of the students, I asked them what they thought about doing it. We tried it when it first came out, and they said, wow, I actually have something to show for this class. And I went, thanks, man, that's awesome. Like the learning, but they're like, no, I can show someone I earned these badges. And I was like, so I'm like, that really motivates you? They're like, yeah. And so that was actually the turning point for me, because I saw how excited people got and getting it quickly. And I thought, gosh, I really need to think about this. I started blogging a little bit about my thought process. And then I ended up trying out by making a badge list, an open badge list site. And I really, this is going to be now my 3rd semester doing it. And I'm definitely seeing what I want out of it. I'm not sure these guys always get it. In the heat of the moment, it just seems like I'm giving them a lot of work. But I'm not asking them to do anything I didn't ask them to do before, except I'm giving it to them in little pieces, which is a more positive experience for them. What are you thinking so far about the badges?
I actually enjoy the badges because, like I said, it keeps me on track and everything. But I do understand the struggle between the elementary education, early childhood, and secondary, and that's hard. So the flexibility in what I can do with the badges and when I want to do them is super beneficial for me.
Awesome. And for those of you who are watching live, you can ask your questions to Dr. Terry Cullen, Brody Smith at use on the hashtag BadgeChatK12. We'll ask your questions live on the air. You can follow her, Dr. Terry C. He is at Brody _ Smith with a Y. We'll make sure to get that tweeted out here at the end of the chat. But you know, so you decided you need to be doing this in class, and you know, you immediately got some positive feedback. As we kind of dive just into the weeds then for folks who are wondering, so what does that look like? How do you bring digital badge credentials into a class with adult students at the University of Oklahoma?
Okay, before I forget, the person's name I forgot was Rick West at BYU, who's doing writing on badges and education. And so I want to make sure to give him a shout out because he's doing some great stuff. Can I go ahead and do a screen share and kind of show you?
Please, yeah, we would love nothing more.
Okay, so let me go ahead and find the screen share. I'm gonna back off from his example here. Let me go to this window. Sorry. This is an example of something he did that I'll go to here in a second. But if I go to our Badgelist site, which is actually, let's see if we can see this. Yeah, it's badgelist.com JRCOE 3043. If we go to this main site, each semester I kind of copy over the badges. One of the things that I like is it's a real easy way for me to reuse my assignments. But what I've done is taken things that I wanted the students to do and then allow them to decide to do it at their own time and their own pace. Which, I mean, people who are, if I'm preaching to the badge choir, you know what I'm talking about. But like, for example, I want students to attend one workshop, either face-to-face or online, or one workshop face-to-face or online. They have to attend 2 different workshops. So what they have to do is they have to take summary of their attendance. So either they take a selfie or a picture of themselves while they're learning. And then what they do is they write a reflection on it, and then they have to tie it to the ISTE standards that we're teaching, the ISTE standards for teachers. And so what they can then do is then show all the different learning that they've done. So one of the things that's been interesting about this is that then students can see other people's examples. So like, for example, we have this one on creating a graphic on plagiarism. We were talking about Creative Commons yesterday and free use graphics. And so for Brody, let me find his there, go down further. All right. For Brody, he just submitted his. It hasn't been graded yet, but he used a picture from the White House with Melania Trump, and he gave credit to it. He was able to explain why he used that picture. And since it's an open badge situation, he can send this link to other people. So this can become part of his portfolio. And each semester I start a new class so their work stays out there, that they can share it with potential employers. I can also, you know, talk good news about them as well. So I'll quit screen sharing. And
well, before you do, something that really jumps out to me there is, you know, a lot of people look at, you know, that attendance badge as almost the worst case, you know, use case example, right? And because it's just a participation trophy, it's a sticker. They like, you know, people talk about, oh, you know, you get this badge for attending a conference, even though you may have just been in the lobby bar the entire time. And I think what you've done is really shown here, you know, that it doesn't have to be that way. That, you know, the badge is for attending, and you only get it for demonstrating that you were an engaged attendee and actually not only sat there, but internalized it and created something new for the world.
Yeah, I would say the other thing is that what I used to do is I used to create these giant assignments where, like, every time I had you do something, you had to write a 2-page paper about it. Do we still have you there?
Yeah, you do.
Oh, did we lose him?
No, you've got me.
Okay, great. So anyway, so instead of having them, you cut out for a sec. Anyway, but instead of having them do like a lot of little assignments that were like 2-page papers, now what they do is they kind of, this is kind of like, I've explained to them that I feel like the badging is more like going to like a casino buffet than sitting down to a meal that you order. And so you can taste a little bit of everything. And so when they do the different things, they write a short reflection. And at the end of the semester, they write 1 paper over all the experiences. basically, why is Dr. Cullen doing this to me, and why will it help me be a great teacher? And so that's really great. I think moving forward, I would love to make it so that they have more choice. Right now, they have to do 16 badges are required, and they have a choice of 4 for larger projects. And in the future, I'd kind of like to make it maybe a choice from like 30, and then let them still do about the same amount. But I just haven't moved up to that. And I think the most important lesson that I've learned is to jump into badging. You don't have to go and immediately have 16 badges. Like, it's been developing as I go, and I've been able to look at my assignments and ask, would they be a good badge?
I think that that's a great tip, that anybody who's been doing this and sticks with it probably would tell people that a secret to their success was starting small and growing incrementally. And I'm really curious, Brady, do you find, and I don't know how much, comparison you have to the old way of doing things, but do you find that there's more meaning to not writing a 2-page paper, that your proof in the pudding is that, hey, I actually did something here, like I created something and had ownership over it?
I mean, I feel kind of biased because I'm an English ed major, so writing isn't that much of a problem for me. But I do like the idea of like seeing what other people did, and to be able to compare our work and see how other people did it and maybe did it better or did it worse than us, and critique ourselves based on that. I think that's probably the biggest pro for me.
Piggybacking on that, Brady, I almost, so often we write that 2-page paper, we turn it in, and our only audience for that is the instructor. Or maybe, in college it's a Canvas that you had to pre-post on a discussion thread, and 2 of your classmates, because they were forced to, had to read it and offer comments. Do you find that with this way of going about the evidence, that the actual looking at other folks' exemplars is more organic, and that you're actually doing it to get ideas, to push yourselves, to just level up and almost, or do some people get competitive? I don't know. What does it look like in your class?
I mean, for me, it's like the principle, like when the first person who posts on a discussion board, you go check out their post and then try to beat it, or like at least match it, make it sound similar. And so that's the way I approach it, is I try to just beat whoever did like the most. Some people, they try to beat like the lowest rung on the ladder, but I still think it breeds that competition.
And by tying it to ISTE standards the way we do, and real application to teaching, do you think that, some students who are classmates of yours, because they're authentically looking at your evidence, is there greater potential that in their, model lesson plans that they'll end up doing during student teaching, that they're kind of beg, borrow, and stealing from each other?
Oh, definitely. We're already doing that.
That is already happening. Can you share an example of what that might look like?
Actually, on the lesson that we're planning for our final project, we're looking at some previous lessons that we've done in one of my English education courses, and we're modifying that and building on what we did in that course particularly. So it wasn't necessarily for badging, but it will end up being for badging this time around, and I think that will be really cool.
I think.
What were you going to say, Dr. Cullen?
I was just going to say they're just starting their final project. So the first 2/3 of the class is all about like exploring and checking stuff out. So that's where the majority of the badging is happening, because if they submit it, if they're supposed to submit like 3 or 4 badges a month, and if they didn't get it, it gets sent back to them so that they can get full points on it. And that will be true until we get to the final due date, which is December 1st. And the idea, though, was that they'd check out all these different technologies and things. And so now when they're doing their final project, they have to make choices. And so they can go back through the app review badge, for example, and look at all the other apps that people used. And then they'll be able to choose from that. And it will stay up there. So, like, my hope is like a year from now when you're student teaching or teaching. Are you a year to student teach? Yeah. When he's out there, what I'm hoping is he will come back and he'll look at what people reviewed and be willing to use that as a resource later.
Awesome. I love that. We do have one question coming in, folks. If you, we have 15 minutes left of their valuable time. So if you have questions you want to ask, just tweet them out at #BadChatK12. Shelly Terrell asks us for Broby. Has earning badges in Dr. Terry's class motivated you to try this with your future learners?
Oh.
I would say that I would consider it because I think it keeps me on track, and I think that is more important to me than necessarily like earning the badge, because they don't necessarily carry that recognition unless you make it a big deal in your classroom, which you could. But it does keep me on track, and I think it would keep other secondary students on track as they're going through and completing their assignments.
I love that you took that in a totally different direction than I think most of us would have thought. An affirmative answer would have gone on that. Speaking of affirmative answers, and this is to either of you, I'm sure that in a class of more than one awesome student, there are some students who aren't, doing keg stands on the Kool-Aid here. And so, and I'm sorry, kids, are there young, pre-service teachers?
Young adults.
In your class. And so what does it look like for the students who are, kind of not buying into it, and what are the objections they're sharing?
Well, I think I could give a couple of them, because he's probably not as comfortable saying that. I would say the first is that there's just too much stuff. Like, I'm just piling on. And the thing is that I don't think that they realize that as a real teacher, they're going to have to manage different requirements and different assignments, and they're going to have to find the time to get stuff done. The badges are far more flexible than the old way of doing things, because they can choose, like, for example, attend a speaker and tweet. They can choose any speaker on campus. It actually would be good for me to talk about the problem I had in the first semester, which I think people who are badgers would understand. So I thought, these are adults. I am not their policeman. They are going to have to learn time management. And so I said, you can do these badges whenever you want. And so each week I gave them like 3 or 4 badges that they needed to do. And I said, hey, work on these. These match the topics we're talking about. This assignment would be easier if you did this badge first. For example, like critiquing Donors Choose makes writing a Donors Choose easier. And what ended up happening was they were all due on April 2nd. And so the majority of them came in on April 1st. So fool was me. And so what we've been struggling with, and I'd love some ideas, maybe some people could tweet out to me at Dr. Terry C, is how do we keep people on track? So what we tried to do was have students make a commitment to 3 or 4 badges a month. And I think the people who are struggling to get them done, it still isn't making a difference. We've said we'll take points off if you don't at least do 3 a month. Doesn't really work. That idea was actually from Shelly Terrell and Sarah Thomas that I got at Badge Summit. But yeah, I'm still having problems with that. The procrastinators will procrastinate no matter what I can do. Any ideas on what I could do to help them?
I have no idea, because I am a fellow procrastinator. For the most part, I did get a badge done this weekend now. So
yeah, so that's a big problem.
And so I'm curious, have you seen, whether in execution or in aspiration, any signs of other folks kind of following in your footsteps, whether it's in the School of Ed there at University of Oklahoma, or in your cohort of pre-service teachers, as they, now that you're in your 3rd semester of doing this, are you seeing folks who are now, moved on to where they're actually doing their practicum hours or doing their student teaching and saying, reaching back out to you, say, hey, what tips do you have? I'd like to try dipping my toes in those waters with the students I'm working with this semester.
I would say the greatest interest I've been getting is from people at ed camps and practicing teachers. I think these guys, no offense, you're a little green yet. And I think like this is kind of revolutionary in some regards. I would say that I think it'll take me a year or 2, because most of my teachers, I think there's probably only about 10. They take my class as a junior, so they're not out yet. There's a lot that are student teaching. And so I think that it's about planting the seeds and watering them and hoping that they'll grow.
Absolutely. And real quick, in case anybody watching has no idea what you're talking about when you say ed camp.
Oh, sorry. So Ed Camp is a teacher unconference that's organized by teachers for teachers, where they pick their topics at the beginning of the day, and teachers teach each other. And especially in the spring semester is when we have Ed Camp OKC. Generally, most of my students go because Ed Camp trumps all. So if they go to an ed camp, they can choose whatever badge they didn't want to work on, and they can get it automatically covered by attending an ed camp. I always have a trump all. So if you don't want to do one, that's fine. Good choice. You can do something a little harder and a little more beneficial.
I love that idea there. And Oklahoma is definitely known for your ed camps with famous folks like Wes Fryer attending. And
he's one of the
y'all are really known. For folks looking to learn more, you can just Google the EdCamp Foundation website and find a comprehensive list of one that will be coming up in your neck of the woods. And real quick, before I throw out any final questions, do know we do have a couple quick minutes if you have a question for Dr. Cullum or Brody to tweet it out at us at #BadgeChatK12. And I'm really wondering, what have you seen over the 3 semesters, Terry, that have been kind of any ahas for you, or, just as importantly, lessons learned of just what doesn't work?
I would say, I think one of the biggest issues is that students and higher ed are still really trained to care about grades. And so in earlier semesters, I said, hey, if you got the badge expert, then you're going to get 10 points. And my evals came back pretty angry because the auto grading feature didn't work. So I really would like to find a tool that I could automatically insert into Canvas so that if they got the badge, they get the grade. That would be my dream world. And I've been talking to some companies about that. So that was a problem. I think the other thing is I made them too easy at first. I had no reflection, and I didn't make them tie to the ISTE standards in the first semester. And then it was too hard for them to write the end of the semester paper. And so when I started to realize that badges are really scaffolds, what they are is a way of teaching someone to take the small bite of the elephant. And so once I looked at it that way and gave them little reflections, I think your paper is going to be a lot easier to write. This is the first semester that we're doing that.
I love that. And Brody, you were kind of nodding along. Did you have something out there?
That's actually what I had written down. Is I would not want anything I did for a badge should be graded on the quality necessarily, but that I did it and I did it to the fullest extent, not necessarily for that grade. So I think completion is definitely the way to go with it. That's just for me.
And how
much of that is about communication on the front end?
Say again.
How much of that is about communication? And because that's we're so used to, this is A+ work, this is A- work, this is B- work, to a more binary world of, you have either met this or you are still working towards it. More zeros and ones. Is part of that, acclimation process just communication on the front end?
Yeah, I think you guys are still struggling with that. There's I will say I had a student say to me, they said, wow, because I said, my point is in this course is for you to have experiences and be willing to try, because you're only going to get these short experiences. When you get into a classroom, I don't want you to say, I made a web page and it was the worst experience ever, I'm never doing it again, right? So I had a student say to me that she felt relieved after I explained that at the beginning. That oh, so I just have to show that I'm learning stuff, and then later I get to choose what I want to use. And she says, gosh, so I don't have to get an A+++++, and her work is still really good. You guys are really wound up. Let me just say that. Brody's like, I'm uncomfortable with this. But they are wound very tight. And the truth is that as real teachers, and I'm not trying to tell them to slack, but as real teachers, we can't be wound that tight. We have to be willing to say that I learned and I tried and admit our mistakes. I'm very transparent with these guys. I try to tell them where I made a mistake, oh, I messed up that badge, or I forgot to give you a place to upload a picture. Duh. I got to go back and fix it. Because as I'm trying new things, it's good for them to see me swear at it a little bit, and also show them that that we're all learning, and transparency is good.
I love that. I had a mentor who put it, sometimes if you need to just go outside the parking lot and kick the tires and drop some F-bombs, we all understand, and then come back in and get back to work.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, we do have one last question from Shelly, and then if there's time, I had another question, but if not, we'll end here. And this is going back to Brody, and it's asking about you, Dr. Coleman. It's asking if you were to attach some kind of recommendation letter to completing all badges, and be an incentive to folks like you, Brody.
Oh. So like at the end, I write a letter back to you saying that you earned all these badges.
I think it would be beneficial, but I think that we still struggle with like that recognition overall. Is like, can I take that to my school district and them understand that correlation of me having these badges and what that means and the significance that that carries?
So in other words, when you have a sense that there's future employers like schools and school districts who are going to have heard of a digital badge credential and recognize and value it, then it would be an incentive to you to have this carrot attached to the credential itself in the form of a recommendation from the instructor.
Exactly.
So it sounds like what you're saying to me, though, like just as we're having this conversation in front of you, what you're saying to me is like it would work out like if I had like Dr. Leisenfeld or one of the principals and stuff that we work with to look at this and say, hey, how would you value this? How would you like this packaged? Then that would make you feel better about doing it. If I said a principal said this is what he'd like to see, you feel good about that.
Absolutely. Making that connection with future employer would definitely help.
And then using a partner.
Yeah, there we go. And you know, for folks who are watching this and you know, diving into planning documents and tools like the Badge Canvas, and you're thinking, what is an endorser? You know, this might be a good moment to come back to. I think what Brody's talking about here kind of qualifies as endorsers, and who are consumers? Absolutely talking about, you know, authentic consumers here for his credentials. You tell you, and this is probably unfair to do this in the final 70 seconds here, but you were touching on, you know, a particular pain point from a functional requirement point of view. Of you know, you wish that on something that's really, you know, machine readable, right, as far as an assessment goes, that you wish that it could just talk to the badge system and automate, you know, that sort of badge issue there. And I think that that's something that a lot of folks that we see when they're diving right into digital badge credentials is what badge platform are you using? You know, they're going straight to the vendor. And I think that's something that I would love to see people be more thoughtful about, is maybe be less in wondering what are the vendors that other people are using, and more thinking first about what are the needs we have, and then take that list to the vendors. And so for folks who don't know what they don't know yet, you know, what are some of the functional requirements that you really, you know, think are going to be huge, you know, in the next 6 to 18 months as a badge user yourself?
I would say that the number one thing that I'm having as kind of an issue is, I mean, of course, I would like it to parse into the grade book. So if I give the badge in one system, it grades in the other. That would be really awesome. That would be that, because right now we're keeping a spreadsheet. There's just a chance for mistakes. As soon as you're transferring, mistakes are high. I would say also is the takeaway. The things that cost money. I like the open badges, and the reason is because I know that when Brody goes on the job market, if he wants to access something, it's out there and it's open, he can access it. I don't know the length of time I'm going to be able to keep it, but like it's out there. He could send a link directly to his badge. I would also like to, I worry about any of the ones that you have to pay for, because a lot of times I feel like they're either trapped in Canvas or they're trapped in my contract with the company. And so once I'm no longer paying, they won't be available to the student, and I don't want them to have to pay. And so that's the difficulty, is that transferability.
I think that those are really great points you make there, that anybody who watches this live or is watching this live or watches this on replay on YouTube will definitely benefit from those considerations. You know, I just can't thank the two of you enough. For those of you who are joining us live, thank you so much for watching. Shelly, we're all big fans of yours and really appreciate you sending in the questions for Terry and Brody. And you can follow Brody again. It is at BROBEE_SMYTH at Brody_Smith, and at Dr. TERRIC at Dr. Terry C on the Twitter to catch up with them. She is Dr. Terry Collin. He is Bryce Smith. Thank you all so much for hanging out on your Monday afternoon. I so appreciate you.
Hey, thank you for inviting us. We're glad to talk about what we're doing. We're doing great stuff at the University of Oklahoma. Thanks.
You really are doing great stuff. Have a badge-worthy week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.